the second to last shot of the movie is Nick Cage fucking running a Mexican turtle over with his goddamn charger. It's so good.
Listen. That is one bad hombre is my favorite line in all of cinema.
Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm an animatronic weasel.
And this week, we lock ourselves in an animatronic serial killer training ground as we talk about Willy's Wonderland. Before we subject ourselves to the whims of a cult, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla, how did this happen?
Okay, so listeners, friends, listen. I saw a headline on Twitter.com that said that Nicolas Cage was in a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, which, make no mistake about it, this is a bootleg Five Nights at Freddy's film. And I thought, oh, this will be hilarious and bad, and we should watch it because it will be bad, but like funny bad, worth our time. And so I mentioned it to Aaron, and I said, hey, this is happening. And then last week, it just so happened that we were doing our usual rigmarole of like, hey, what are we doing next week? Because we've given up on planning. And Aaron's like, hey, we haven't done a movie in a while. And I said, but do we want to do a good movie or a bad movie? And Aaron said a bad movie, and I said, listen. Time to, what about a good old Willy's Wonderland? And he said, oh God, fine. And now we're here.
And here's the thing, listeners. Leyla was wrong. Leyla didn't pick a bad movie. Leyla picked a fucking good movie.
I picked an all-time fucking home run. Listen, okay, before we get into it, Aaron, do you have a history with Five Nights at Freddy's?
I'm like weirdly interested in the lore of it, actually. I'm sure you know who Matt Pat is, but he does...
I do not, actually.
Oh, well, he's like this pretty popular YouTuber. He runs the Game Theory channel, and I just watched like a ton of his movies about Five Nights at Freddy's lore when I was in college for some reason. I just like, yeah, I don't know a dick about FNAF, but like that's when it came out in like 2015. It was like super popular then. So I was like, I guess I'll learn about the weird FNAF conspiracies. And so like I've never played them because they'd scare the shit out of me because I'm a little baby, but like I do kind of know about the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. And so like this movie kind of like follows a similar, like something terrible happened at a weird pizza place with animatronics in it, and now the animatronics are evil and they, love to kill. What's your history with Five Nights at Freddy's?
So I have played Five Nights at Freddy's. I've played Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and the only reason I ever fucking got through it, because I as well am a weenie baby, is because other people were watching me play, and the spirit of competition just fucking eases all the anxiety, and it told me to just get to Night 4, and I did. I did die in Night 4, but, I got there, and that's the important lesson. However, a shout out to John Wolfe on YouTube, who plays horror games so that I don't have to, because I think horror is fascinating, but am, again, weenie. He played all of them, and they get fucking weird.
Yeah, I know there's some strange stuff, like about how kids get murdered in the pizza place, and like there's like a puppet, and there's a purple man, but like what do you mean they get weird?
Well, there's one where they're like in a factory, and there's like multiple rooms happening. You have to like crawl through vents and shit. Yeah. It's odd. It gets odd. But you know what? Make that bag. Yeah,
listen, if I was the person who made Five Nights at Freddy's, I would, much like Mr. Oda from our last episode, not do anything else because that cash spends.
Make that bag, for real. No, but so it is curious that I'm not sure if maybe they he wasn't approached for the rights to make a Five Nights at Freddy's film, or maybe he wasn't. He said no. But this is a work inspired by those good games.
It's in the FNAF genre, but basically, yeah, it's the same premise, right? A guy goes into a spooky, haunted, Chuck E. Cheese-like place with, animatronics that are obviously evil, and he has to survive the night in order to get paid. In this case, like, his car's tires got popped, but like the whole deal is that if he survives, he can get his tires repaired for free, and they can go home, and it's fine. And of course, in this universe, all the people that have done this before, have died because they're being sacrificed to these evil animatronics. But the thing that Willy's Wonderland posits is that what if instead of a harmless janitor with no martial skills, you were Nicolas fucking Cage and you didn't take any prisoners?
Yeah, I think the most striking thing about this film, because I went in blind, right? I knew nothing. I knew that Nick Cage was in it and that it was basically Five Nights at Freddy's. I refused to read any articles, any coverage, anything at all. I just went in. I was like, fuck it, I have faith. Let's go. I was about 20 minutes into the movie. Like, they were, he was getting shown around Willy's Wonderland. And it just struck me that Nicolas Cage had not said a word yet. And folks, he doesn't. There are no lines for Mr. Cage. It's all punches. It's all punches.
It rules. I was actually able to find the whole video on YouTube. So like the first YouTube comment was like, Nick Cage doesn't say anything in this movie, and that's great, actually. And it is. Like, listen, we've all seen all the memes. We know that he says the bees, and that's all very good and funny. I think this is actually some of his best acting, like, I've seen in any movie that he's done.
Listen, I've said it once before, I'll say it again. Movies like this can only work if everyone in them commits to the bit. And Nicolas Cage committed to the fucking bit.
I mean, basically, his character is like, he's basically a cowboy. And we'll talk about my theory about how Willy's Wonderland is a Western here in a bit.
I'm fascinated by cowboy.
So he comes into this town, and like he's very like a tough guy, and he's we're gonna talk about this, but he fucks up the animatronics in really funny ways. But like there's other kids too. There's Liv, who is the adoptive daughter of the sheriff, who is evil and in on it. And then there's also Tex, who just looks like Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome.
Me. We have to use Tex's government name, which is Tex McAdoo, which is objectively the funniest fucking name.
That's his last name.
And I said this to Marty, who is Canadian, and Marty said, if you told me that was the name of a random generic American, I would believe you. And that is the power of Tex McAdoo. Tex
McAdoo is also evil and also kind of a scumbag, and I love him. There's the car mechanic, but he's not super important. And there's Liv's friends, which are just a bunch of like, they're 20-year-old teenagers, like, they're all older people, and it's fine. They're a bunch of idiots, and I love them. And then of course there's the animatronics, which is, Willy, he's a giant weasel. There's an ostrich. There's a chameleon. There's like a weird fairy. There's a gorilla.
Yeah, that one was odd.
There's a turtle that is for some reason Mexican. There's a lot going on there, but they do all meet horrible and grisly deaths, which kicks ass.
It does. It does kick ass. Namely, the it being Nick Cage. Nick Cage kicks ass. Within the first, I think the first incident with an animatronic, he just, breaks a broom over his fucking knee and just beats the shit out of this thing. And it's funny because I think you brought this up a little bit in the outline, but it is such a video game movie in the sense that the protagonist doesn't talk. Whenever he encounters a new person, they just monologue at him. It's written very much like expository video game dialogue, and it's so funny. It made me think of Legend of Zelda, just because Link will walk into a situation and then somebody will monologue a problem at him. So it picks at this weird thing that we don't talk about in interactive narrative. Well, we talk about it just not often, of like how weird that is, that like non-voiced characters just get monologued at all the time and just end up in situations. And then, because again, this is inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's, there's this weird kind of mechanic to the movie of Tex tells him that you have to take breaks. So no matter what, at a certain interval of time, when Nick Cage's watch goes off, literally he left a child in the middle of a death match with an animatronic because his watch went off. He has to go play pinball and he has to go have a soda.
It's
no
so
matter
good.
what is happening.
It's the best scene in cinema, I think. So like what happens is Liv, this poor teenager, she's been fighting all these, animatronics, and like half of her friends are dead at this point. And, earlier on, Nick Cage, like she had like run up to an animatronic that was just standing there because, they stand at the podium and wait. But she like drew this knife and she ran up at the animatronic and Nick Cage just like blocked her and he's like, no, they're not fighting. He didn't say anything, but his body language was just like, you can't fight them right now. And he takes the knife from her. And also, it should be known that he drinks a soda called Punch. It's just called Punch. And he has like 8 of them in the fridge. And he's like working on dusting off this pinball machine. And he's been doing that for the first half of the movie. But then, like, in this latter half of the movie, where Liv is about to get, like, her last friend is killed by this big chameleon that, like, has a weird tongue and it snaps her friend's neck. Nick Cage comes up to save her. And he's like, all right, we'll fight this chameleon together. And then his watch goes off. He looks at the watch, and then he looks at her. He looks at the chameleon, and then he pulls the knife back out and hands it to her and leaves.
He just leaves. In the middle of a confrontation, he just goes. And it is the funniest, like, mechanic I've ever seen in a movie because it's so video game, right? Like, you have a timer, and when the timer is done, your encounter's over. You go play a mini game. Like, it is just so... Like, if you've played a video game, I think the misconception about this movie, because I had somebody tell me it was terrible, and I did not ask why. I think the misconception about this movie is it's a movie for horror fans. It's not. It's a movie for video game fans.
Absolutely. No, if you like horror, you're not going to have a good time, because there's maybe one part, maybe 2 parts where I was scared, and I'm very easily frightened. Like, there's a little bit of tension, like, when you think that there might be a jump scare, but that's it. Like, when you look at the animatronics, like, there's like probably 80 different production companies that help do this CGI work. So like they look bad and silly and, not at all frightening. But like as people who like video games, I mean, like this is perfect for people who are like, what if Five Nights at Freddy's was in the Doom universe? Like it's so good, and it hits all the tropes of what video games are like, and like what it would like to be to interact with a protagonist that doesn't have any dialogue. It's just like, I'm just here to do my job and I'm not going to do anything else in the meantime.
Right. Okay. So like in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which is a genuinely like jump scary game, right? Like it's frightening, it's tense because you get to interact with it. There is this mechanic that gets introduced, which is like this jukebox, and you have to go wind it every once in a while, or else the puppet in the jukebox kills you. And it, because children's songs in movies are scary, in like horror. Any like distorted, you've heard it, right? In every trailer, like any distorted Ring Around the Rosie, like terrifying. So Willy's Wonderland has a birthday song, but it doesn't do anything. It's just there to kind of check a box, right? It's like, it's your birthday, so we want you to have fun. And it just keeps playing every time an animatronic is about to come get you. But it's like, it's not scary. It's not meant to be scary because, like you said, the animatronics are not scary. It's not supposed to be scary. It's goof-ass shit, and I love it.
No, it's
funny.
It's completely bonkers, and like, I wish that the people that made this movie do actually make a profit on it, because I think it's actually very smart if it is what they were going for. I mean, they hired Nicolas Cage for a reason. Whoever made this fucking movie knew what they were doing, and they did it in the best way possible. And like, God, let's talk real quick about why, like what you thought about the puppets, because in my notes, people consider animatronics scary, and like I don't know why that is. I was like, what makes animatronics scary? Is it just because of the uncanny valley? And what did you write in our notes, Leyla?
I don't find them scary, and Americans are weak. Finding animatronics and clowns terrifying is a very American thing, to the point of there was an interview with the creator of Resident Evil 8, and there is puppets in that game. There's a puppet lady, Donna, and he's like, I didn't know the American fans would react like that. I found a weakness. And I'm like, that's right, you have, because no one else in the world finds clowns and animatronics scary. Is it like the potential that they'll move on their own?
I don't know. Maybe that is. Maybe that's like a weird thing. Like America doesn't like it when you can't see, when they're not in control. Maybe that's like a weird psychological, cultural thing. I don't know. I'm just doing fucking Sigmund Freud, but for Wally's Wonderland up here. But
just armchair psychology for an entire country.
Yeah.
Hey.
I don't know. It's just very strange. But yeah, no, I do get that response. It's like, I don't like the weird jerky motions. Like, I cannot go to a Chuck E. Cheese and look at those fucking animatronics. It would scare the hell out of me. I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
I mean, I guess so. I think their eyes were too big to be scary, I think. Or maybe not big enough to be scary, because in Five Nights at Freddy's, they have giant eyes and they're pretty terrifying. But I think the one I found the most unsettling was the fairy. Maybe because she was the only, like, humanoid?
It was definitely weird, because you kind of expect them to be like animals, and all the other ones are, except for this fairy. And the fairy was very strange. I don't know why they incorporated her in such a way, but it was a little unsettling.
But she was, manic and a little murder bot, so she fit. She was fun. I didn't have that much of a problem with it. I found her creepy, but like in a not like a scary way, just in a maybe not this one way,
Yeah.
maybe this doesn't fit in with the rest of the band. I thought Willy was cute.
Willy wasn't scary at all. He was just like kind of a big, long weasel thing. I mean, even at the end when he and Nick Cage have their final battle, like he scratches him a little bit, but like that's it. Like,
what a confrontation.
What
a beautiful fight scene.
Here's the thing. This movie is much more like a John Wick than like a horror movie, because like there are literal fight scenes. Like we set up before, like, he hands the girl the knife and then she has a knife fight with a puppet, and like that's fine. But there are other ones where like there's the one in the bathroom, right, where he gets ambushed by the gorilla, which he should not have been ambushed by that gorilla, because that gorilla is fucking 10 feet wide and apparently was just hanging from the ceiling, and it jumped down on him. I don't know how he didn't see it. It was fine. But like there's like that's a thing in Mission Impossible 3 with, Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise. Like, there's a bathroom fight scene, and they do a very similar thing where fucking Nick Cage, like, smashes the gorilla into the toilet. There's another fight scene, probably my favorite one, which is where, so the sheriff turns out to be evil, and the sheriff, like, handcuffs Nick Cage, and she's like, hey, I'm sorry, Willy, take him back, we got this bastard, he doesn't speak for the rest of the town, please kill him and leave us alone. And her daughter says the iconic line, like, he's not trapped in there with them, they're trapped in there with him. And I fucking loved that. It was so corny and so good, and it was just perfect for what they were going for. But this fight is like, I think it's the fairy, and I don't know if it's the chameleon or just like another weird one of them. But like he's handcuffed, and they're both like staring at him across this like pizza parlor. And right before they, come and get him, he like puts the back of his boot to turn on some music, and he like turns on like another like stupid little kids song, and they have a fucking showdown, and he like whoops up on them without his arms. He just like headbutts them, and like at the very end he breaks out of the cuffs with just his raw muscle. It's so good.
It's so good. And the music choices in this movie are so just great, right? Because the soundtrack has to do all of the talking when Nick Cage won't. Like, he's not walking around monologuing what he's doing. He's just doing stuff. And so there has to be this, like a substitution almost of music. But the thing I am, like, the most heated about, I think, in, like, a good way, is that the Willy's Wonderland theme slaps. and I'm so mad that it explicitly is called, like, Willy's Wonderland, because I can't just, like, put it in my Spotify library, but it gives me such big Journey vibes, like, peak, like, Separate Ways, Worlds Apart Journey, like, that big, like, 80s sound that I fucking love, and I just, it fucks. By the end of the movie, now mind you, I was drinking while I was watching the movie, by the end of the movie, I was just, like, singing along to it every time it came on. I watched all of the credits to get that song out of there. It just fucks, man. But, okay, so you mentioned John Wick. I really want you to expound on this Willy's Wonderland as a Western theory.
Okay. It's... okay, so... The Western genre has a couple of tropes, and I think that Willy's Wonderland shares those tropes. Firstly, we have a male protagonist who is kind of a tough guy that, you know, plays by his own rules, and he's wandering in from outside of town to a town that's got some trouble. He is waylaid there by reasons that don't really matter, but for whatever reason, he meets the sheriff of the town, and other members of the town that inform him, like, oh, you know, there's some trouble here, and you'd be doing us all a favor if you could help us. If you could help us with this. You know, he gets caught up in a scheme where he's promised a fair deal, but also it's made clear, like, you know, the people that he's working with are shady, and the deal's rigged from the jump. You know, I think in Westerns there's a trope of the sheriff not being able to take over their own town, or like the sheriff is gone from the town. Either way, the sheriff is useless, so our protagonist has to reestablish order. And there's several different standoffs with a gang of lawless outlaws. Now, in Westerns, those lawless outlaws might just be, you know, Native Americans or Mexicans, but here they are various animatronic robots that, you know, show up and try to rough up our protagonist, and they do get a couple hits on him, right? He doesn't always win flawlessly, but he does always win. He wins the affection of the locals, which in this case is a gang of teens that don't know how to burn down buildings properly, and they sort of band together. He is able to overcome the challenge at the end, and, you know, he takes off into the wilderness after taking the pay he was promised, despite the fact that the deal was rigged. I mean, now sometimes, like, what I'm drawing from is Red Dead Redemption. This follows a very similar arc to John Marston's arc in that video game. You know, in Red Dead Redemption, John Marston is killed. He doesn't make it through the deal, but, you know, sometimes they don't make it out. But in this one, they make it out, and I think that this movie's a Western instead of a horror film.
I mean, well, withdrawing the comparison to John Wick, do you think that John Wick is also a Western then, or is it just like that kind of action movie overlap? I've never seen John Wick, so I'm going to take your word on whatever the fuck you say.
I think there's more emphasis on action in John Wick. Like, there is some more world building, and, you know, you talk about the thing of assassins. I wouldn't say that John Wick is a Western necessarily, because, like, John Wick has a history, and he's not just like some guy that's coming in from out of town to solve a problem. I think Nick Cage is much more, you know, just the Lone Ranger showing up to establish order, right? John Wick is a hitman out for revenge. He's not, you know, trying to free the people of some wrong. Whereas Nicolas Cage, the janitor, is the outside force. You know, perhaps it's the sheriff or the bounty hunter that's come to bring in an outlaw that no one else can stop, or maybe he's, you know, the American government coming in to bring, quote unquote, civilization to the lawless frontier. But in this case, he functions in the same way and does bring order and peace back to the town. And they literally call him Cowboy at one point. He wears cowboy boots, and listen, I'm not wrong, is what I'm saying.
I'm agreeing with you. I think you're right. I think it is a Western. We should watch more Westerns for this podcast. No, it's true. He does get to leave in, like, I don't know if I would say he brought peace to the town, because he did there were a few murders.
Also, that happens in Westerns. A lot of murders do happen.
That's true. All of the kids except for Liv die, which... Can we just have like a vigil for the bimbo?
Kaylee Cowan, yeah, pour one out for her. She was great.
She was, like, Liv starts out the movie handcuffed, because her mom handcuffs her within the van, and all her friends come in, and, like, one of them obviously has a crush on her, and they're all, like, arguing about where the keys to these handcuffs are, and this girl in her little leopard coat walks over and just with a fucking bobby pin gets in there and unlocks it, and I love her, and she died being horny for death, which is... In the satanic ritual suicide room, a thing we somehow haven't brought up yet.
Okay, but that's kind of also the point, right? Like, they do exposition dump, but, like, this movie's under 90 minutes. Like, they don't over-exposit. They do exactly the amount...
88.
Yeah, exactly. It's beautiful.
88 minutes, baby.
I watched the Da Vinci Code earlier this week. I wish that fucking Ron Howard, or at least Dan Brown, had tried to cut back a little bit. But
is that a Ron Howard flick?
Yes, he directed both Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons.
One of those movies I've seen. Couldn't tell you which one. He should have taken notes from whoever the fuck directed this masterpiece. They were in and out in a tight 88 minutes, and that's including credits.
Yeah, but, like, exactly. Like, they were like, okay, we should probably give the audience a reason to, like, we can't just be like, the animatronics are just aliens and they're evil. But they're just like, okay, there was a bunch of murderers here, and they killed people, and when the cops closed it in, they sold their souls to Satan, and now they live in the animatronics. That's all you need. You need to go deeper.
Nope, I completely understand the narrative shorthand of selling your soul to the devil, and then the town also makes a deal with the devil to protect the people that the animatronics were then killing. They were like, hey, we will feed you. And I think some of my favorite dialogue is the sheriff, like, apologizing to Willy, who doesn't talk for most of the movie. And, it's just so fucking funny because she'll come in and she'll just genuflect to him. She's like, Willy, I'm so sorry. He doesn't speak for us. Yes, this fucks.
It's extremely,
so
like,
good.
embarrassed mom coming up to the mayor after her child, like, threw a tomato at him or something. She's like, I'm so sorry. This is very embarrassing for us. Please just devour this man and leave us in peace. I apologize. It kicks ass.
That being said, I'm so glad she didn't get a redemption arc because she sucked. And there was a moment where, because she handcuffs her kid to a fucking rail, you know? But there was a moment where I was like, when she was, like, driving to get Liv from Willy's Wonderland, I was like, oh no, are they going to redeem her? And they didn't. They didn't.
They did not.
Fucks.
No.
She gets to leave with Nick Cage.
Yes, and, like, it's so smart to do that because I think a lesser writer would have been like, oh, and now she has a change of heart. She comes back and she's like, yeah, I'll help you defeat the evil people, and maybe she'll die heroically. But, like, she gets a redemption arc. But, like, there's no need for that. We see that she's a shitty mom from the beginning. She's been in on it the whole time. Like, it makes so much more narrative sense to just be like, nah, fuck her. She's dead too. And, like, that's what happens. Willy kills her. And, fights Nick Cage. It rules.
And Tex McAdoo and the mechanic don't get away either. They explode.
Yeah, that was a weird last-minute add-on there. The one doll that survived, the pixie, just, like, sets their tailpipe on fire and blows up all three of them.
I thought it was fine just because I don't know. To me, it said that the fucking murder bots are creatures of chaos and they don't give a fuck.
Also, the one at the very, very end showed up. Like, Liv was like, okay, I'm gonna shoot you because she was getting taken home by this other police officer. But then, like, I guess one of the puppets got on top of the car and killed him. And she was about to shoot him with the shotgun. The puppet somehow got the shotgun shells out with his fucking foam fingers. So that was very funny. So she was like, whatever, pendejo. And she turns the shotgun around and beats him to death with it. But he didn't die. So the second to last shot of the movie is Nick Cage fucking running a Mexican turtle over with his goddamn charger. It's so good.
Listen. That is one bad hombre is my favorite line in all of cinema. Is it good? No. Is it respectful? No. But is it funny? Yes. Yes.
It's
great.
Funny.
It's almost as funny as the line. Like, listen, I did parts. Sometimes there's one black cast member in, like, the group of kids, and sometimes he would say things that I'd be like, who wrote this? Who?
Yeah.
It was a lot. But there was a moment where the bimbo, and I say that lovingly, bimbo, parentheses, celebratory, she got turned on by the satanic ritual suicide room, and he just turns around. He's like, "Oh, you're a freak then."
Yeah,
great.
That slapped. He also had possibly my favorite line in the movie, which is like everyone was arguing about trying to go in to rescue Liv because she went in to talk to Nick Cage, and they're like, "Oh, you want to stay here?" And he's like, "I actually want to leave, and I thought y'all might want to also." Like, what are y'all doing here? Like, I thought that was hysterical.
And meanwhile, the dumb shit that's like in love with her, I love the way he died, because there was an animatronic that came up to him and was like, "Chris, I'm not like the other ones. Free me, Chris. Send me to the afterlife." And then Liv walks in, she's like, "What the fuck are you doing, you idiot?" Because she's the only one with brain cells. And then fucking Puppet gets so mad at her and then kills him. I'm like, that's what you get for not killing her on sight, boy. You gotta get with the times. They all had great deaths. The bimbo and I don't want to call him the black kid. Fuck.
I mean, for a horror movie, he does check that box of like the one person of color.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't remember any of these kids' names. Unfortunately, they're all stereotypes to me, except for Liv. But like, because they were written that way. They die fucking, and it's the most funny, like campy, like buckets of gore situation.
They get eaten by an evil alligator. It's pretty good.
And she did say, "Hey, has that thing been watching us?"
And he's like, "Let's give him a show."
And y'all died boning, and you know what?
That's how I want to go out.
It's better than some of the other deaths. So
yeah, one of them gets impaled by a big knight. I guess one of the animatronics was just a knight.
Oh yeah, that was a weird one too.
I don't know why they just had some dude with a sword.
With a big, it was like a Minecraft sword almost.
Honestly, yeah. Oh god, there's just so much wild shit that happens.
It's a wild little flick, and I loved all beautiful, tightly edited 88 minutes of it.
Honestly, perfect. I was just so pleasantly surprised by this. If you've got 90 minutes to kill, I highly, highly recommend it. It slaps.
It's very fun. And I mean, like we said, it's not like it's not the most perfect movie in the world, but listen, it's damn near close.
It's pretty darn close. It was a good damn film.
It's pretty darn close. A solid, I will give it a 9.2 out of 10. Absolutely.
For sure. I feel like that's it.
That's it. It could be a short one.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot of character dialogue and plot we could dig into. I think we've pretty much nailed it.
In fact, there was very little dialogue.
Yes, explicitly so. Yeah, well, Leyla, when we're not talking about the most horrible way a bunch of animatronic robots can maim us, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, I'm generally talking about how horrible animatronics could maim me, but you could find me doing that at LEYLSES on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. I just wrote an essay about parasocial relationships and Bo Burnham's Inside, his new special. And I draw sometimes. Aaron, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at AaronSXL. I mostly tweet about health policy, but also just some wild stuff, such as... Actually, it's just cicadas right now, again, unfortunately. But I also put out an essay today about why I think that the Cruella's mom gets pushed off a cliff by a Dalmatian is actually good, and villain origin stories need to be preserved. I'll put links to both of our essays in this as well. I also have another podcast at The Bible Boys. We just watched The Da Vinci Code, which was quite a bad movie, but I had a good time. And next week we'll be watching reading 101 questions about the Bible and Christianity, which is a comic book that does make some leaps, which I would highly recommend you tune in for next week.
The Da Vinci Code, a movie that I may or may not have seen, and do not know if I watched it or Angels and Demons, and also thought Nick Cage was the star of.
Like I said in that episode, if we got a National Treasure movie that starred Tom Hanks and a Da Vinci's Code that starred Nicolas Cage, we would be living in the best timeline. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, what do we say to the kids when we're when we're welcoming them to our pizza parlor.
It's your birthday and we want you to have fun. It's your birthday, so come on, listen.